5, 4, 9. The number you've been dialing is not connected. Please check your number before dialing again. 5, 4, 9. The dilution you've been trying is called homeopathy. Please check Avogadro's number before thinking again.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Soiken.
Hello, it's Stefan here in the zone this week, all on my own. Poor Richard's got laryngitis, I think. He's not even able to talk, so he's left it all up to me to do the intros and outros and try and get things rolling here. Very weird being in the zone on your own, I tell you. I feel a little bit quantum here. I'm hosting, but I'm co-hosting, and I'm sort of observing myself doing just that in some sort of indivisible co-hosting, hosting sort of zone-ish kind of thing, and it's just not working for me. So I'm going to try and get through it as quick as I can and hope that Richard gets better soon. Coming up in the show, we've got Jennifer Ouellette. Now, she's a fascinating lady who's in Hollywood trying to promote real science in the movies. That's going to destroy the script writing careers of about 98% of most Hollywood script writers. M. Night Shyamalan is quaking in his boots right now, wondering what the hell he can do. But it's going to be a fascinating thing. Let's see if we can see what Jennifer Ouellette has got to say about her mission of introducing reality to the movies. After that, we've got Dr. Rachie Reports with the famous Dr. Rachel Dunlop, and then the ever-popular Think Tank, yes, where a bunch of skeptics go head-to-head over a couple of beers and try and solve the world's problems. So, yes, all in all, a good show 35. Can't wait for Richard to come back. It's pretty lonely here, but let's get on with the show.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and together with Richard Saunders, we're talking to Jennifer Ouellette. She's the author of The Physics of the Buffyverse and Black Bodies and Quantum Cats. You may be familiar with her blog, Cocktail Party Physics, which features half a dozen female contributors on a group science blog, where contributors and readers alike chat about the latest ideas and news in science, with a twist. Jennifer has been recently appointed the Director of the Science and Entertainment Exchange, allowing entertainment industry professionals access to the top scientists and engineers in order to bring the reality of cutting-edge science to the storylines we enjoy on the big and small screens. She'll be presenting at the Amazing Meeting 7 in Las Vegas, and we're very proud to have her talking to us here on the Skeptic Zone.
And joining us from Los Angeles is Jennifer Ouellette. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm really well. Now, I understand you're a bit of a novice when it comes to Skype.
This is my very first time, and I love it already. I'm going to be using this all the time.
I've introduced you to a new addiction. I'm afraid about that.
Yep, I think you have.
Now, we're very excited to hear that you're going to be a guest speaker at the Amazing Meeting coming up in a very few weeks now in Las Vegas with James Randi. Can you tell our audience a little bit, of course they'll all be there, but regardless, can you tell them a little bit about what you're going to be speaking on?
Well, I wear many hats, but the main one that I'm wearing these days is I'm director of a new program of the National Academy of Sciences called the Science and Entertainment Exchange. And, of course, I've known Phil Plait through the blogosphere for a couple of years now. And one of the things that the Science and Entertainment Exchange does is try and get – we basically try to foster creative collaborations between science and Hollywood. So if a TV show needs a scientist to, for a particular episode that they're working on, or a movie director wants, to sit down and brainstorm with a couple of physicists about, how wormholes work and things like that, we would find a scientist who can do this. So we have a lot of volunteer scientists who call in and offer their services, and we have a database that we're building, and we match them up. And the intent here, I don't know if you've noticed, I just did this blog post on the Skeptics blog for TAM, on this, that you've got shows now coming on, things like The Mentalist, things like House, things like CSI, that have a much more scientific-based, rational approach. Mentalist in particular, especially on the earlier episodes, really drove home there's no such thing as psychics,
Right.
Lie to Me, actually, in their second episode, debunked lie detector tests. You've got Gregory House, who is like this complete curmudgeon, but people will listen to a negative message from him because they love the character. So, and, you can nitpick all you want about these shows, but the fact is, week after week after week, this message is getting drilled into people, and that does, over the long term, have an effect. So the National Academy is hoping to basically foster this current trend in television and get more interactions between science and Hollywood in hopes of changing the way science and scientists are portrayed.
That's very interesting you should say that, because we have also, mentioning House, of course, we have also starring in House Hugh Laurie, who is a very well-known skeptic, in fact, and I don't know how much influence he has personally on the scripts or what have you, but certainly the House character comes across as quite a strong skeptic in many aspects.
Oh yeah, he's a marvelous character, and of course I've been a fan of Hugh Laurie for years. I was a big Blackadder fan, and I used to watch Fry and Laurie. So unusual for an American. I find that very few Americans have heard of Blackadder, but I remember him from that. So hearing an American accent come out of his mouth is really bizarre.
It is, but he does it very well. Of course, we here on the Skeptic Zone, we interviewed his former partner and great friend, Stephen Fry.
Oh, big friend of science, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Stephen Fry is a huge friend of science and a skeptical man himself. And also, another link I can make with The Mentalist is it stars Simon Baker, who is, of course, Australian. Exactly.
And let me tell you, if you're gonna crush people's, delusions and tell them there's no such thing as psychics, at least give them Simon Baker to deliver them. Speaking as a woman, it's like, at least have that devilish smile saying, honey, there's no such thing as psychics, but I'll smile at you and that'll make it better.
I must remember that. There's a little tip for me there, thank you, because I've been known to go on TV myself from time to time and tell people there are no such things as psychics.
Yeah. It's like, get that, devil-may-care smile in there, and you might actually find that they'll be more likely to listen.
Good tip, a very good tip. Now, it's very interesting you should be concerned with this at the moment. I have had experiences myself with television and in the movie industry. Is it very difficult to try and get producers, especially knowing the industry a little bit as I do, to come around to your way of thinking, or at least see the benefit of being accurate?
Well, it's surprising. I think there's a lot that may have been the case more in the past, and it probably still is to a certain extent the case because people change slowly. But, Hollywood is essentially about making money. It's not about altruism. It's basically, is this show going to be a hit? And I think that, a lot of the big hit shows right now have been science-themed with a rational theme. A lot of the procedurals, they want procedurals that have this sort of science-skeptical, rationalist worldview associated with them, and they really like that. You've got a built-in drama, for starters, whenever they come across New Age stuff. So they just really like it. And so I think that in terms of television, at least, a lot of them are more open to it. And we have certainly had, we have, producers and directors coming to us for major films wanting to work with us. It's not that they don't care about the science. They do. The trick is that mainly what they're afraid of is that the scientists will try and insist that they do a documentary, and ultimately we're talking about a story. The science is always going to take a backseat to the story. So, I think it's very important that we not get confused about what we can accomplish in Hollywood. And NAS, the National Academy, is very clear that we do not interfere with the narrative, with the story. We want Hollywood to basically help us inspire people and get them interested in science and in rationalism so that they then go on and read more and become more educated. But if you don't get that initial spark, if you don't get that initial, hey, this looks cool, then you've already lost. You can make the best documentaries in the world, and no one's going to be open to them. So that's kind of what we focus on, and we find they are very open to that. They love sitting down with scientists. They love hashing out ideas. They don't always take the ideas, or sometimes they'll take the idea and they'll reinvent it in a way that maybe might make a scientist a little uncomfortable. And you kind of have to let go of that, And so, in the long term, gradually, we're making a long-term change.
Yes, well, I can certainly see the point of view from the producer. They do, as you say, in the end of the day, they're trying to make a product that will sell. And there comes a time where they're simply not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Well, or you have to bend the facts. I mean, sometimes a fact, it might be factually correct, but it's actually really hard to get everything else in the story to work around that. So it's not even that they're trying to hide it. They're just trying to get the story to move. And I know that I've actually talked to people who have seen CSI and complained that the DNA results come back so quickly. And it's because nobody wants to wait 2 weeks for DNA results to come back. You've got to get on with the stories. And that's an extreme example, but it's the kind of thing you run into.
Do you think the popularity now of this sort of thing, this sort of new science content, could be traced back to the boom in such programs as CSI and all these wonderful medical investigating forensic type programs?
Well, certainly medical has always been a big deal, dating all the way back to Marcus Welby, and people have always loved detective stories. The brilliance of CSI is it combined the science of forensics with the detective story. And that turned out to be just a golden combination in terms of network gold and ratings gold. And now you've got numbers, and now you've got bones, and you've got all these procedurals, essentially, where you can have a set cast of characters that can develop and grow over various seasons, but you also get these nice little standalone episodes where you solve a crime in an hour. And it's just a fantastic, for whatever reason, it just broadly appeals to a huge audience.
It's interesting.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, one of the things I made a point in my blog post is, it's actually good news that there is now a demand for these sort of things.
I think so. It's also, I can't help thinking it's interesting at roughly the same time we've got the growth and the sprouting of these sort of CSI crime investigation type programs using, well, albeit a little bit stretched to the imagination, scientific forensic work. We've also had a gaggle of these psychic detective shows. Oh,
right. Although you've also got things like Psych, which is a fake, psychic detective show. Yeah. And you've got The Mentalist, who's a fake psychic detective, who openly admits he's a fake psychic. But and I think that if you look at the ratings, though, I think you actually find that if you get all the ratings of like The Mentalist and CSI and Numbers and all those, they dwarf the other ones. They dwarf The Ghost Whisperer, for example. But it's that same formula. I mean, notice that people love the procedural. They love solving a mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly love when those shows are good. I love to watch them too. Now, I have actually tried to sit down and watch a couple of episodes of Medium. I've never seen The Ghost Whisperer, although it is shown here in Australia. And you know what? I have to admit a big fail. I couldn't get through it.
I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Medium. I've caught bits and pieces of The Ghost Whisperer because Numbers comes on right after it. It's like, in this really bizarre, skewed kind of network, logic. And it's not, it's not that people they're in love with the story. And I think sometimes we mistake the fact that, they love the story and therefore that means that they won't take a skeptical viewpoint. Give them a wonderful character and a great story and get them invested in that, and they'll accept it. And I think that Mentalist and CSI and these other shows prove that. I mean, it's really about the powerful story. I don't think Medium is actually even a big hit ratings-wise. I mean, it's one of those shows that does okay, that they keep it going, but it certainly is not the kind of show that causes a lot of buzz. It's not one of their big money makers. Let's put it that way.
Oh, it's interesting to know that a lot of people do consider what they see on programs like CSI, and on the flip side, programs like Medium, as being more or less like a mini documentary.
I know, and I find that really interesting because someone told me the story that some government agency approached the producers of 24, basically saying that they were getting recruits who were thinking that Kiefer Sutherland's character's approach to interrogation was somehow okay, in all the ways that he violates rules, and they were asking them to basically, could you change your depiction of this? And, okay, on the one hand I understand, but on the other I'm kind of going, maybe what you should be emphasizing to your recruits is that the difference between fiction and reality. and that this is a show and it's entertainment. It's supposed to be fun. And yes, we want it to be believable and have some realistic elements in it to add plausibility. But we never lose sight of the fact that it's fiction. And if some people haven't, that's a bigger problem than the TV show.
Well, it's a very old story, because I remember hearing, and this is it actually really happened, it's documented, that in the days when Gilligan's Island was shown, the US Coast Guard were getting mail to them saying, why aren't you looking for these people?
I know, and Marcus Welby used to get, letters from people asking for medical advice. Seriously, I mean, they thought he was real. And what can you do with those people? I don't know.
Okay, Jennifer, that's really interesting, and of course, you realize I have a sneaking interest in this sort of thing, the movies and the TV from my experience. But I'll hand you over now to Kylie, who's going to ask you some other questions. Kylie.
Okay. Hello, Jennifer. Your website says that you stumbled into writing about science and learned to appreciate it after working on a graduate degree in literature. How and why did you begin this journey?
Well, it's interesting. I never finished that graduate degree in literature. I started to basically get a master's degree and decided that really wasn't for me and kind of lost direction a little bit. And sometimes when you lose direction in that really fundamental way, you end up finding yourself. And that's kind of what happened. I ended up working for a physics organization called the American Physical Society. And I had never taken physics in high school. In fact, I had probably avoided it. Even though I'd always done well in science and things like that and always had a certain amount of a rational viewpoint to life, I certainly had not had any kind of scientific background. And just by, hanging out with physicists and interviewing them and writing about their work and this sort of thing, it had a profound change and impact on my life. And I ended up becoming a science writer of all things. And if you had asked me at the age of 18 that I would be a science writer, I would have laughed at you. But in fact, it turned out to be the perfect thing.
Did people pick up on your enthusiasm, or were there many people who stood back and said, what's she doing on our turf as a science communicator?
Well, it's really funny that I only get that really from the occasional scientist.
Oh!
Believe it or not. I don't get it from other people. What I get from you get the usual, oh, you must be really smart. I could never understand that. And that always makes me angry because I think, you're selling yourself short. You can understand it. You just need to find a good communicator who can explain the concepts to you, and you can understand it. Anyone can, because I'm not a genius. When my first book came out, I think that I would occasionally get the odd scientist basically saying, how dare you speak for science, you English major scum, essentially. It's like, only scientists should be talking about science. And of course, that those people who say those sorts of things are rarities. They are not representative of the field at all. And I certainly had been around scientists enough by then to know that those were just crazy people. So I was able to kind of block that out. But you get that sometimes.
And certainly now we can see the intersection between art, science, literature growing even more and more.
Right, but at the time, I think that really wasn't quite, things were very much still segregated. And one of the reasons I wrote that first book, and it has a lot of broad cultural references in terms of literature and theater and art and history and all these various things, and it wove the science in with all of that because I felt that science had kind of been unjustly separated from the rest of culture. There's our broader culture, and then there's science way over in left field, and only smart people get to do science. And there's something just intrinsically wrong to me with that mindset.
We can see the interchange between science, literature, pop culture within your popular blog, Cocktail Party Physics, which has physics with a twist. And that's been going for the last 2 years or so, hasn't it?
Actually, even longer, going a little over 3 years. Yeah, I know, 3 years now. And it started because, again, the first book, people asked me to describe it, and I kind of went, well, it's kind of cocktail party physics. It's like it's not really deep. And, there are certain errors of omission, you might say, what my friend Chad Orsel calls lying to children, where you just choose to omit certain complicating factors. And you just tell entertaining stories and weave the science in, and it's a way of getting people familiar and interested in what is normally a kind of a scary subject for them.
I've noticed that there's quite a few additional bloggers, and they all help add to the mixture of the cocktail party.
Initially it was a solo blog, and then last fall, when I was getting ready to take on the position at the Exchange with the National Academy, I realized that I really did decide to make it an actual cocktail party and get different voices in. And I think that it's been a phenomenal decision. They've been great.
And you regularly attend conferences with other scientists and science bloggers, such as Blogging Heads TV. How important do you think the networking is with fellow science writers? How much does it add to the enjoyment of communicating?
Oh, enjoyment. It adds to the enjoyment, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we're in a hard field, particularly in this day and age when we're not sure where print is going. We don't have sure what our jobs are going to be in 10 years. I mean, I think science writing is going to reinvent itself, but I'm certainly not going to predict where it's going to go. So these sorts of interactions with other science writers are very important. I mean, I want to know my colleagues, and invariably they're all very supportive. I mean, people sometimes get this idea that we're all very competitive with each other, but I've never found that to be the case. They've always been incredibly supportive.
And recently you gave blog readers the teaser about book writing. Are you able to tell us much about the book that's in the making?
Yeah, actually. I'm kind of doing for calculus what I did for physics initially, except this is a little bit more the blog voice. It's more personal. So it's a book about learning calculus in my 40s, essentially.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it's called Dangerous Curves, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Calculus. So, I'm basically doing things like going to Vegas and going to Disneyland and putting calculus back into the real world and saying, there's actually, when you get doused on Splash Mountain and your clothes dry off, the rate at which they dry off forms an exponential decay curve, and that's calculus. And there's a problem that you can do to figure that out.
Have you noticed that there's been a recent trend towards books investigating maths? I recall Danica McKellar, for example, is another author who has begun in getting maths into the mainstream.
Right, and Danica is wonderful because she's good at math, and she's this really pretty young woman who's an actress, so she's already well known to people. Certainly the television show Numbers, I think, helped. I mean, I think Numbers does a fantastic job of showing how, their tagline is, "We all use math every day." And it's interesting because my husband and I were house hunting earlier this year, and it occurred to me, I mean, that is going to be in the book, that experience, because it occurred to me that what we were doing in the process of choosing a house was a multivariable optimization problem, where we had all these variables of things we wanted in a house, and we weren't going to get all of them. There's no such thing as the perfect house, but we had to figure out what the optimal combination was. And I think conceptually we all do this whenever we comparison shop on anything. And it never occurs to us this is the concept behind a basic calculus problem. But it is, and then you just have to figure out a way to quantify it, and then you've got the math. Yeah, there'll be a couple blog posts up over the summer as I'm kind of working through the kinks of the final manuscript. It takes a long time once you turn the manuscript in, and I'll turn it in September, and it'll probably come out sometime in 2010. But watch the blog. I'll be basically pushing it on the blog as we get closer.
Thank you very much for that, Jennifer. It's wonderful to hear about the progress of your book that I'm certain people will be looking out for. And I really enjoy your blog site at Cocktail Party Physics. And I'm really very envious of Richard Saunders, who'll be hearing you present at TAM 7, telling us all about the Science and Entertainment Exchange.
Well, thank you, Kylie. And thank you too, Jennifer, for that wonderful interview.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Andrew from the Nonsense Podcast.
Bringing you a skeptical overview of news, religion and all forms of pseudoscience.
We're defending science and reason against the onslaught of medical and spiritual nonsense.
All week, we are busy researching and debunking pseudoscience. But on the seventh day, we listen to the Skeptic Zone.
Check us out at nonsenspodcast.libsyn.com or search for the Nonsense Podcast on iTunes.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello everyone and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. A bumper episode this week, homeopathy gets a slapdown and the death of a toddler under tragic circumstances at an alternative medicine clinic. But we kick off with some good news about consumer protection in Australia. This is an alternative medicine smackdown which comes to you courtesy of a sceptical colleague, Michael, who submitted a complaint about a homeopathy website to our government regulator several months ago. This website, called Arnica Montana, was spruiking all manner of dubious products and making equally dubious claims. The company has websites in the UK and Australia and sells homeopathic first aid kits, homeopathic remedies for emergencies, makes claims that homeopathy is useful for serious health conditions, and also toes the anti-vax line in articles promoting the Australian Vaccination Network and bragging about refusing the whooping cough vaccine. Michael's complaints to the government body were extensive, but essentially challenged dubious claims made by the company. And this week he was advised that all his complaints were upheld, and as a result the website has been ordered to publish an online retraction. Regular listeners to The Zone may remember I called Arnica Montana out back in February, just after the Victorian bushfires, after a listener alerted me to a passage on their website which said the following: "In light of recent events in Bali and the bushfires in the eastern states of Australia, information about the use of homeopathy by the ordinary person is knowledge that should be shared." In fact, this particular claim was disputed by Michael and upheld by the panel. They also upheld complaints pertaining to breaches of the advertising code, including that the advertising or website unlawfully made claims that the products could have therapeutic benefits for serious health conditions including cancer, childbirth, emergencies, the severe burns previously referred to, scalds, traumatic shock, bird flu, SARS, postpartum hemorrhage, depression, brain tumours, convulsions, macular degeneration and other serious conditions. The report from the government panel went on to say that they found claims made in the advertisement were misleading, were likely to lead to consumers self-diagnosing and inappropriately treating serious diseases, and arouse unrealistic expectations of the effectiveness of the products. The advertiser was given an opportunity to respond to the criticisms and rejected the allegation that there was, quote, anything deceptive or misleading, unquote, in the advertisement or website. The advertiser claimed that the website was, quote, intended to be an information website to educate the public about the use of homeopathic remedies. But the panel found that the website breached sections of the advertising code which prohibit advertisements for products that, quote, abuse the trust or exploit the knowledge of consumers, and was likely to arouse unwarranted and unrealistic expectations of product effectiveness. The panel also cited the fact that no persuasive evidence was provided that the advertised products could have benefits in relation to the wide range of conditions referred to. In response to this, the advertiser said that, quote, controlled trials cannot be used for homeopathy, but there is a mass of unpublished evidence. Indeed, the website is littered with testimonials, but the panel also called these into question because according to the advertising code, testimonials, quote, must be documented, genuine, not misleading, and illustrate typical cases only. As an example of a breach of this section, the panel used this testimonial as an example, quote, the calendula cream I make is specific to cancer skin keratosis, and I have successfully treated many of these and established melanomas by using the sage cream at night and the calendula during the day. Overall, Michael received 9 pages of correspondence, and I waded through all of it, which I'm very glad I did, because buried deep in the text I came across this. The panel noted that the advertisement or website breached Section 4, Part 5 of the Code, which states, by implying that other therapeutic goods, namely vaccines and sunscreens, could be harmful. I can only assume that this is based on references on embedded blog posts and news sections on the website that refer to the Australian Vaccination Network, Merrill Dorry, and include misinformation about vaccination. This is indeed a very interesting piece of legislation and one that I will file away for future reference. Also interestingly, the panel deemed the entire Arnica Montana website to be an advertisement. According to the code, An advertisement is defined as, quote, to include any statement, pictorial representation or design, however made, that is intended, whether directly or indirectly, to promote the use or supply of goods. Since the website offered a range of products for sale, the panel was satisfied it constituted an advertisement for therapeutic goods. Also interestingly is that the complaint summary cites the subject matter of the complaint as a website advertisement and the sanctions as withdrawal of advertisement, thus stating that the entire website is to be withdrawn. But if you go to the website now at arnicamontana.com.au, you will find the published retraction for sure, but the remainder of the website still functions as normal. I wonder when and if we will see the entire website removed. Not a very happy homeopathy week for some. Next is the tragic story of the death of a toddler who was crushed by a massage table in Adelaide. What makes this story even more sad is that the death occurred at the Favira Clinic in Adelaide, which is the home of Elvira Brunt, an alternative therapist who claims to be able to cure cancer with massage. More on this in a moment. But reports surrounding the death say the 18-month-old girl was crushed to death by a massage table while her mother was being treated. A police inspector said, quote, a young 18-month-old child, a girl, has died as a result of being trapped in a component of a massage table. The child was under the table when it started to be lowered. Regular listeners might remember the Favira Alternative Medicine Clinic from a previous Dr. Rachie, when I mentioned that she had advised the father of a young girl with leukemia to feed her Kentucky Fried Chicken to get her kidneys functioning again. A current parliamentary inquiry in South Australia had received several submissions from members of the public about the dubious practices of Ms. Brunt. Unfortunately, the parliamentary inquiry has yet to be completed, so Elvira Brunt is still practising. On the same day that the child died, the inquiry into bogus, unregistered and deregistered health practitioners named Elvira Brunt as a person of interest for allegedly claiming she could cure cancer through abdominal massage, for telling patients to stop normal treatment, and requiring cash payments for services and not providing receipts. Other alternative therapists named as part of the inquiry were Elizabeth Goldway, for allegedly saying she could cure cancer, charging thousands of dollars for treatment and not providing receipts to patients. Monica Milker was also named for allegedly claiming she could cure cancer with injections to kill the worms that were causing the problem, and Lubomir Batelka, who allegedly subjected a patient to vaginal blowing with an ozone therapy machine, saying it offered a 50% cure for cancer. The Member of Parliament Ian Hunter, who tabled the report, said, quote, while some practitioners may be delusional, convinced that they are able to cure serious medical conditions, the evidence presented to the committee suggested that others are driven by greed and, in some cases, sexual gratification. He continued, the committee heard shocking stories from people who said their loved ones had been exploited when they were at their most vulnerable, who were given false hope and who wasted thousands of dollars on bogus treatments, he said. The committee stated that while most practitioners were ethical, proper regulation, monitoring and exposure of unethical behaviour was needed. Although it seems likely that Elvira Brunt will be banned from practising eventually, it will be too little too late for many, including now an 18-month-old girl. To find the links for today's stories, head to skepticzone.tv and follow the links to the Zoners blog. You can also check out my other blog at skepticsbook.com. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
So that's why you can't eat it. I was just talking to the students here. Now look, I'm supposed to tell you about something. The Cosmic Tea Party, a new science podcast. podcast? The hell is that? At any rate, it's about science and mathematics. Sounds rather dull. Oh, hang on. It says here, not dull. Well, so there you have it, the Cosmic Tea Party podcast. www.cosmicteaparty.org, or search for them on iTunes.
Join us now for drinking skeptically in the think tank.
Well, welcome to the think tank, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, boy. This is going to take a while because there's lots of glasses here. There's lots of alcohol. There's lots of all sorts of... Thank you.
The mathematicians can work out how many combinations there are.
There are. And look, we have to thank listener Darren Snodgrass, who actually sent us money for a round of drinks. In fact, more than enough for a round of drinks.
Yeah.
Darren.
Wow.
I approve of this.
He does.
Do this more.
Darren,
There's 5,000 of you.
A week, Dave.
A week.
if you're ever in Sydney, Darren, please join us for the think tank. That's marvellously generous of you, and we'll
Thanks,
do drinking to your health
Yeah.
right now.
Cheers to Darren.
Cheers.
Oh, that's good. That's very nice. Well, welcome to the think tank. Now, we have our regular lineup with the think tank tonight, more or less. Dr. Rachie.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, Dr. Rachie. Thank you for Dr. Rachie reports as ever.
You're welcome.
I know you get a lot of fans now.
I do, apparently,
You
don't
do,
I?
yeah.
Yes. And I'm getting busier and busier, as a matter of fact.
You are, you poor thing. You're up half the night working on this stuff.
I am actually, yeah. But it's worth it.
It
It's
is.
worth it.
And somebody else is up half the night. I don't know what he's doing. It's Dave the Happy Singer.
Hello, Richard. Hello, tankers.
Tankers now, is it?
Tankers, yeah.
I thought they were zoners.
No, tankers now that alcohol's involved.
Oh, I see. Other people listen to this segment of tankers.
Yeah, a bunch of tankers.
I'll buy that. And we have visiting us once again, it's Joe Benhamu. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Richard.
Thank you for your contribution last week's episode, where you read your report
yes.
from Mind Body Wallet.
Was it last week? I've lost track of time already.
Come a little bit closer. We also have joining us tonight Chief Investigator from the Australian Skeptics.
Hello, Richard.
Ian Bryce. Hello. Great that you could come along, and we'll have a chat to you in a moment. Being
Excellent.
a chief investigator is an interesting job. Very interesting. And somebody's got their phone on. Oh, Dave, the Happy Singer.
It's going off. I was switching it off now. It's gone.
That noise you heard was Dave, the Happy Singer, switching off his phone as I reached for mine to switch it off too, just so it doesn't go off. And last but certainly not least, we have Diane. Hello, Diane.
Hi, how are you, Richard?
I'm very well. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Thank you. Diane, of course, joined with me a few weeks ago now when we went to the Parents, Babies and Pregnancy Expo.
Yes.
And we uncovered chiropractors saying some pretty silly things.
That's right.
We did indeed. All right, now, Darren, who so kindly shouted us this wonderful round of drinks we have on the table before us, would like to know what are some of the strangest things that we've come across in our investigations as skeptics. And I thought, Ian, this might be a good question for you. What are some of the stranger things in your years of investigation that you've come across?
Okay, well, we had lots of boring things, like people being able to tell your personality by holding your jewellery, and foretell your future and read your tea leaves and predict lotto numbers. But possibly the one that stands out in my mind is the guy who talks to dragons.
Talks to dragon.
Yes, he used to live around Sydney, and he believes that the limestone formations were set there in the past by dragons, and some of them are imprints of dragons. You might have seen some tessellated pavements. This is some natural rocks with a crisscross pattern on them that occur sometimes around Australia. And he says they're imprints of the scales on dragons, where dragons died there thousands of years ago.
That's
Oh, the
amazing.
scales.
The
Is what
scales
makes
from the skin.
I see.
But also, he sent me a little bag of, looks to me like sandstone, but he's had it analysed a number of places, and it's his opinion that this is dragon poo. And it's one of my treasured possessions for the Skeptics Museum, is this claimed bag of dragon poo. So I think that's probably the weirdest.
So what do you test it against, Ian, to know it's dragon poo? Because don't you have to have like a compound to test it against to compare it to?
Well, that would be the ideal way, but you can at least test it against existing sandstone.
Right.
And if you find it's identical,
then it's sandstone.
That's probably sufficient for skeptics anyway.
Right.
I could talk to dragons once, on the telephone. It's called the hotline. Anyway,
this guy claimed.
I don't even get that.
Well, she laughed.
He found it much easier to talk to dragons after imbibing certain chemical substances.
Oh.
So maybe
that's cheating.
Anyone can talk to dragons after that.
So, talking to dragons, I like that, Ian. Anything else come to mind?
Well, we had a guy in America trying to predict lotto numbers, but he claims to be able to pick one or two numbers out of a long sequence of numbers, and if he gets one or two right out of maybe the 10 digits that occur in the typical lotto results, then he wants to claim a $100,000 prize.
You think he wouldn't have to, would you?
So he wouldn't have to, that's right.
He wouldn't have to. But it's a very interesting question because I remember I gave a talk once and somebody asked me what was the strangest thing I've ever come across. And it depends on how you look at it. They're all pretty strange. Any claim that defies the laws of physics as we know it's got to be a strange claim to begin with. But a lot of people think that when skeptics go along to investigations and have amazing adventures like Fox Mulder or Indiana Jones, doing. But you normally turn up to somewhere and nothing happens.
Yeah,
honestly, that's the case.
It's often an anticlimax or a disappointment.
Except for Mind Body Wallet, where there's lots of woo everywhere. But when you're going on an investigation, wouldn't you say this, Ian? It's mostly an anticlimax.
Yes, indeed. We've tested lots of so-called people with paranormal powers, and it's quite disappointing when we get a result that's totally in accordance with chance. Bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah.
Well, remember, Richard, last year we went to look at the Holy Post at Coogee Beach.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And we didn't see anything.
Well,
did we?
Well, the Holy Post, which was pareidolia, was like a human figure when the shadow of the post was just in the right way and you stood in the right... It's actually gone now because there are trees there or a bush or the fence has been.
I was equally disappointed. Even so, I didn't see anything holy. Anyway, it was a beautiful day. We went for a swim afterwards.
We did.
It wasn't all that.
And that's on an earlier episode of the Skeptic Zone. Me, and Steve Roberts.
Steve Roberts, yeah.
So Darren, to answer your questions, I can't think of anything that particularly stands out as strange. I mean, there's a lot of strange stuff out there. And again, if you want to find strange claims, go to the Mind Body Spirit Festival. You walk 10 feet and you can find a strange claim. No ghosts, though.
I guess it's just because they're the ones we don't see very much of, but so many of the strange ones they're so popularised that we're aware of them.
Yeah. I mean, dowsing's pretty strange when you think about it, but everyone sort of knows about it, I guess. Or as Darren said, breatharians, he was wondering about that, but I haven't investigated them personally. Have you, Ian?
No, I've seen some television shows, but not personally. But I have investigated quite a few alternative astronomical configurations that people put in, particularly retired engineers,
oh, yes.
which I'm just about one, seem to have a penchant for putting in their own theory of the nature of space-time.
Oh.
There's a couple of bad signs when they start off saying, I find the traditional definitions of space and time to be inadequate, therefore I will define my own. That's a bad sign. One guy sent us in a diagram showing his design for the solar system, which included the stars passing in front of the moon.
Right.
And he had sent this to a number of government agencies, claiming this to be his theory, and the CSIRO wrote back very carefully and earnestly. Apparently a scientist there felt sorry for him, and so that if you would go outside and actually look at the stars one night, you'll see that they're much brighter than the moon and actually pass behind the moon. And had he considered doing an actual test of his own theory?
Yeah.
And he wasn't put off at all. He just sent his on to us.
Oh dear.
And another guy had a free energy machine. I get a lot of those. And he had written to all the scientists in Australia and government authorities and so forth and collected all their replies, including one from Mark Oliphant. And Mark Oliphant said something like, took the time to reply, which is very considerate of him, said, I've studied your claims in detail and there's nothing in them at all that indicates that cold fusion as you claim it is occurring. So the guy put this letter from Mark Oliphant in his CV that he sends around to everyone. It says it's been examined by scientists. So some people just will not be persuaded from their beliefs.
That's true. Absolutely true. In fact, I'm just reaching over and picking up this latest issue of the Skeptic magazine from Australia, volume 29, number 2.
Oh, is there a new issue of the Skeptic magazine now, Richard?
Just by chance, yes. I just happen to have one here too, and there are
very well designed.
Oh, I thought so. Thank you very much.
I think the graphic design is smashing.
The content's quite smashing too, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Because we've got the new laws of skepticism in here. A lot of people over Twitter, especially, contributed to these laws of skepticism, and there was one here that sort of relates. I'm just trying to find it. Oh, there are many here. It's like Henry's Law. The most common reply from a psychic to a skeptical question is, "It doesn't work like that."
That's excellent.
Which is quite true, actually. You get that all the time. Or Ellen's Law.
There's another one I get.
Oh, sorry, yes?
I'm not sure you're ready for the explanation. To someone with 2 degrees or more.
You're blocking it. You're blocking the energy because you're a skeptic.
I can't find the exact one. Or Edmund's Law, psychics will always have an out, which is quite true. Anyway, that's all on page 47 of the latest Skeptic magazine, available now. Woohoo! All right, thank you once again. Thank you, Darren. I hope we've answered your question a little bit there. We do get some interesting things from time to time. Another listener writes in and asks, this is from Patrick. Hello, Patrick. Are Chinese herbs... Now, this is a very interesting question, the way it's worded. Are Chinese herbs as harmfully ineffective as homeopathy?
No.
Everyone's thinking for a second.
You don't have to think. The answer is no. Because there's actually something in them, as opposed to homeopathy.
Funny, it's funny how it's worded.
I think you've got to... in something like this, you've got to take each claim on its merits. Yeah. And you can't just generalise Chinese herbs in that if each specific herb has got to be examined on the basis of its purported efficacy for whatever ailment and examined on the basis of the evidence. Now, we know homeopathy is mercifully evidence-free.
Yeah.
You mean evidence-free, you say?
There's lots of evidence, but it's all negative.
You look shocked, Diane.
I am shocked.
Yeah, so, I mean, my answer is not necessarily. There might be something out there. Of course, aspirin's the classic example. It came out the bark of a tree, and it's a completely natural thing. Yeah. It's a commonplace conventional medicine.
I think what Patrick's getting at here is that in the case of this recent baby that sadly died, because the parents were delivering homeopathy to it for eczema. Mm-hmm. In that...
Her name was Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria. Yes, thank you.
Gloria Thomas.
In that case, the parents were using homeopathy, which was harmfully ineffective. Mm. You see where I'm coming from? Now, in the case...
I mean, the very fact that it was ineffective...
Made it harmful.
Made it harmful.
Because the parents were relying on it.
Yeah.
That's why I stand by my answer that the answer is no, because those herbs have something in them. They actually are quite often contaminated with heavy metals as well. That's not all of them, but some of them. So they are either toxic or have an effect or don't have an effect, but they don't come under the same umbrella as homeopathy.
They are different.
The other thing is also with anything that has an active ingredient in it, combined with any other medicines, you've also got the possibility for interactions that could potentially be harmful. So something like ginkgo biloba or garlic mixed with something like warfarin, the blood thinner, can be catastrophically harmful. And that only came out when it was discovered that a lot of elderly people who were taking these combinations had catastrophic brain hemorrhages because the ginkgo and the garlic end up resulting in even further increased anticoagulation or thinning of the blood. And that was only discovered when these people came to harm as a result of this. So, I think that in that sense, homeopathy will be harmless because it's got nothing in it, but it's harmful because it's not treating the problem that should be being treated.
Yeah. But I did take the point of these things have to be taken on their merits depending on what Chinese herb we're talking about in what context. But generally speaking, yes, homeopathy has the great potential to be harmfully ineffective because it doesn't do a damn thing, whereas Chinese herbs or any other herbs may or may not
contain herbs.
Can I just ask a question? With the Chinese herbs, is there generally any research being done on the effectiveness?
Huge amounts of research on Chinese herbs. A lot of it in China, as a matter of fact, but not all in China. There's a Chinese medicine research facility at the University of Technology in Sydney that doesn't just look at herbs but looks at acupuncture and other Chinese medicine. So yeah, there's a massive amount of literature out there.
Generally published and peer-reviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there is a lot in peer-reviewed journals. A lot of it is appearing in the Journal of Nutritional Medicine or something like that. I would have to have a look on PubMed to see if there's anything in high impact factor journals, the likes of Nature or Science, but there's a massive amount of work being done on it.
I imagine that every pharmaceutical company would love to get their hands on some naturally occurring plant that's got some wonder benefit that's not treated at the moment by conventional medicine.
But also,
they're everywhere, but they're just hidden because of the conspiracy.
But there's also a lot of work being done on the antioxidant properties of Chinese herbs. I go to a fair few conferences with a lot of colleagues who are based in Asia, in China and in Japan, and they do spend a lot of government money looking at the antioxidant properties of things like tea, particularly green tea, and also rice. And looking
rice?
Yeah. There's no evidence yet that I know of, because once you cook it, then you're affecting the the effectiveness of the antioxidants. But yeah, there's a huge amount of literature.
Okay.
But in general, would you would presumably want to go to the conventional medical sources? You'd want to go to your doctor or your pharmacist rather than the local Chinese herb store where you don't know.
I didn't say the evidence was positive.
No.
I said there's a lot of literature.
While we're saying that there's a lot of potential for Chinese herbs or any herbs potentially to have some kind of demonstrated benefit, the best thing is still to consult evidence-based medicine.
Well,
science-based medicine.
Science-based
The thing
medicine.
is, Dave, there probably are, as Joe says, active ingredients in these products, just like there is in, the bark of a willow tree, which is aspirin, right? But you don't know, if you go and chew on a willow tree, how much of the active ingredient you're going to be getting.
There's no control over it.
That's right, and that's the issue with some alternative therapies such as Chinese
You
herbs.
don't know what you're getting.
You don't necessarily
You just don't know what you're getting. Yeah.
So with a pharmaceutical drug, and I'm being paid by Big Pharma, where's my check, Big Pharma?
I'll be getting it out shortly.
It's the Big Pharma.
Oh, I'm sorry I'm late, tankers. But I had hell on trying to get those sheep into the paddock. Because Rusty, my old sheepdog, he's broken his leg, bless him. And I couldn't get. I was running around, and Mrs. Big Pharma was running around as well, jiggling all over the place, and she burned the lasagna. And oh my, it's been
I must tell
crazy day.
I must tell you, Big Pharma, that you might want to call on the this lovely practitioner of therapeutic touch for animals to help your
therapeutic touch for dogs.
Yes. There's a lovely lady somewhere out there who I came across recently who practices therapeutic touch for various animals. So
I will check it out. The one thing I heard last week is apparently there's homeopathy for dogs, and we've been checking it out, and there's big news from the world of homeopathy for dogs, and it doesn't work at all. So homeopathy, it's rubbish on animals too.
The trouble with
Happy Homeopathy Week, everyone.
The trouble with Big Pharma is he rabbits on, but he doesn't send us the checks. Now, Ian, what...
I will be writing the checks next week. I just need to bring him the kale from the North Meadow, and the foals are at it like rabbits at the moment. I've got to keep them separated.
Ian, you look like you wanted to say something a moment ago.
Oh, well, a few thoughts have come and gone. Talking about dogs.
Oh, yes.
I've got a very smart dog at home, because only yesterday I asked the dog, what's 37 minus 15 minus 22? And the dog said nothing.
Oh, no. You've been replaced.
Don't
And on the subject of replacement...
I'm sure I could come up with a worse joke than that.
I was going to say earlier, when we were talking about Chinese herbs, that if you go down to Hay Street and into the Chinese herbalists there, they have an enormous array of, a big cupboard with an enormous array of drawers. Often they have maybe 12 by 15 drawers in a rectangular array, all with a handle on it. And when they mix your herbs, they open the drawers and they take up so many grams of this herb and so many grams of that herb, and they mix them up and boil them up for you. And the funny thing is, all of these 200 or 300 drawers do not have any labels on them at all. So the people who mix them are relying entirely on their memory of what's in each drawer. And where's the quality control here?
What's in the case?
What's in the drawers, eh?
Yeah.
What's in your drawers?
I'm not telling you that.
No.
I'm not telling you that on the podcast.
Joe, a topic you wanted to talk about, I know, from earlier.
Oh, yes. It's actually come about from speaking to people who aren't part of the sort of active skeptical community. And I've just had a lot of people who are aware of some of the issues surrounding, various complementary and alternative medicines and all of the things that we talk about. And they really felt, I think, they felt quite isolated from what active skeptics do.
Yeah.
And they just, a lot of people, I think, feel quite hostile towards people who identify as being skeptics.
Yes.
And, they felt that they didn't know how to access the sorts of things that we talk about. And they said, well, how do, if you know all these things, if you know about the fact that homeopathy has no evidence behind it and that there is potential harm in all of these things, well, how do I, as a person out there who might go out and buy these things or who might go and see someone who's offering these treatments, how do I know that this is not safe or quite mad at times? And it's something that actually has been bothering me for a while. How do we disseminate information to people in a way that is palatable for them when they're not familiar with thinking skeptically?
Yeah.
And one of the things I actually thought of was I can't remember I've had a brain freeze, but What to Do Next.
Daniel Loxton.
That's Daniel Loxton.
Yeah.
The Skeptic.
Yeah.
Magazine, isn't it?
I thought that for people who are skeptics, who are looking for information of how to actually, be more active and what to do, that would be a good resource. But generally speaking, I thought, well, what can we do to share information with people in a way that is perhaps, I think there are a lot of terms we use like woo that we're all familiar with, but to other people it's a bit strange. They don't understand it. It's new to them. How can we make
How
things
did you
more...
find out?
Well,
your own experience.
Well, I think I've mentioned this before. I can't remember not thinking this way. I can't remember not being a skeptic, and it was really just a matter of going from a small S skeptic to a big S skeptic for me.
Skeptic.
Yeah, skeptic. It was more. It went from something that I was aware of in my own head to something that I was quite happy to shout out to people because I felt it was necessary to do something about
You make a very good point, because it was only a couple of weeks ago when we were in Melbourne. Were you with Kylie and me and Steve when we went into the pharmacy and we picked up the bottle of, the packet of sleeping pills, homeopathy?
Yes, I was with you. Yeah.
Homeopathy, and the young assistant who came over and said, yes, can I help you, didn't have a clue. And I said, yeah, I'm trying to decide which box of pills to eat all at once. And she looked at me like I was either kidding or mad or both or whatever the case may be. Now, she didn't know. And she's working in a pharmacy, so for the general public, of course they're going to fall for this stuff, because why should they know, and how do they get to know? I suppose we're doing our bit by making, a podcast at the moment. Now, hopefully there'll be people listening to this will be their first skeptical podcast, and it'll be this episode. Hello. Hello. And they might pick up something along the way. And if everybody who listens to this now have a bit of a think, and if they know a friend who might benefit, let them know about the podcast, and so on. But apart from that...
Well, we had this discussion the other night on Skype, and I mentioned to you, Joe, that I think one of the best ways to do it, and this has been talked about by other skeptics in the past, is to get it out there, and particularly through blogs, for example. Write about it, Twitter about it, link to it, get it onto the internet. So if somebody is a parent, for example, and wants to do some research on, let's say, the MMR, measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, because they've heard some rumours that it causes autism, if you type in MMR autism into Google, you won't just get hits saying, yes, it does. You'll get lots of web pages that say it doesn't for this reason and this reason. And I've had an experience recently where someone got on somebody else's blog, actually Sean the Bloggernaut's blog, and was saying, well, you guys are saying that vaccines don't cause this and this, but, you know, why are you saying this? And about 6 or 7 of us got on and said, here's the reasons why, here's the evidence. And at the end of that discussion, this person said, well, thanks, guys, I was hoping to get a debate and I was hoping to get some intelligent responses, and I did, and I'm pleased, and I'll go away and think about it now. So I think that's really important, because if you type those sort of things into Google and one of the first sort of hits you get is a website disputing these erroneous claims, that's going to, you know, put a seed in your mind and give you an opportunity to look for something that is a different opinion or based in evidence rather than...
And I think also the other thing is also the image that we have as skeptics. You know, I've frequently been called or been told that I'm involved with the Australian cynics.
And that you're closed-minded?
And you're closed-minded. I mean, the things I think we're all familiar with. And, I think the public perception of what we do and how we... why we do this.
Yeah, you have to be very
important.
careful, because I work with a lot of parents, and if I go in working with parents and say, oh, it's all rubbish and you shouldn't believe all that, what I think what you need to do is, especially if you have a relationship with these people, do it in small doses and not overwhelm, and it's all rubbish. That's the worst thing that you can do.
I think, I'm sure you would have had similar experiences of sitting in a dinner table with people, and, something I've learned as I've gone along in this is, sometimes you assume people are going to think similarly to you even if they don't express it. And, I've sat with people at a dinner table and quite loudly expressed my views on homeopathy, and then realised that I'm sitting with people who use homeopathy. And you sort of sit back and you think... Oh, well, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with expressing it. Yeah. But if they're people who use it, who are unaware, I mean, as we've said before, a lot of people don't know what homeopathy is. They use it, they don't know what it is, they think that there's an active ingredient in it.
Or they just assume it's another sort of medicine.
Exactly.
Not even that it's alternative medicine, especially if they go into a pharmacy and it's right off the shelf. Why would they think it's not... just another medical...
No, they think it's natural because it's touted as no side effects, so they think it's natural, yes.
Exactly, in the same way as...
I mean, it's a fair question to say, well, why would it be sold in pharmacies? Why would the market be there? Why would they be able to spend all this money making it and packaging it and putting it out there if it were just... water and sugar pills? And it's a fair enough question.
No, exactly. They think it's a medicine, but they think it's a natural medicine, which in itself is...
But still,
that's the naturalistic fallacy.
If you...
Yeah, that's right.
If you pick up, for example, as I've said before, about the homeopathic remedies for pain and fever for children, which I think is quite dangerous.
They have lollipops now, have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Homeopathic lollipops, I'm not kidding.
For kids, yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
So they're lollipops.
Yes. Pretty much.
I bet they cost more than normal lollipops,
yes,
don't
they do.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, if you pick up, your paracetamol, and if you read on the back and it says 500 milligrams of paracetamol, and you pick up your homeopathic remedy and it says,
30X,
30C,
whatever.
6C, whatever. How is the average person going to have a clue what that means? And how can they be expected to?
Well, yes, I was about to say that. Why should they?
No.
Why should they? They should be able to go into a pharmacy and simply trust that this stuff is kosher, so to speak.
It should be an advertising standard that if it doesn't contain any ingredient, it should not be stated as having that ingredient.
Exactly.
Well, interesting, homeopathy is not listed with the government because it contains nothing, so it's not regulated because there's nothing to regulate.
It contains the memory of the water, yeah.
Are you Samuel Hanneman?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Samuel Hanneman's here with us tonight, as well as the big farmer.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm sorry for all this confusion. It was just a little joke, you know.
I'm glad you're here because I've been having a little bit of trouble with Daisy's udders.
Oh no, it's the big farmer.
I was wondering if you might have something that I can put on her teats to stop the swelling.
Yes, I have, but we'll discuss it later, my boy, okay?
Darren's drinks are going down well.
Well, I've got to go now, everybody. Thank you very much.
I think the other thing is just to live the...
It's the big farmer and Samuel Hanneman. I can't believe it. I thought you were dead.
Yes, this is the homeopathic ghost. You know?
Listeners, I should tell you that Richard is on pharmaceutical drugs. He has some sort of flu.
I've got a bit of a cold.
As opposed to the illicit kind, which you might have suspected.
Oh dear, now I've lost the plot. I've lost the plot. Oh, yeah.
No, but can I just come back to the whole, how do we deal with talking to people who aren't big S skeptics? I think most people are small S skeptics to a certain extent. Everybody who buys a used car is a small S skeptic in that respect. It's just they don't apply it naturally to every situation. But part of it is just by being sceptical. I mean, I remember a long boozy conversation with a colleague at a party once when for some reason we got onto skepticism, and I don't like banging it down people's throats. I love shouting my mouth out if people take me on, and I love talking to members of the community, but I don't like to bang it down apathetic people's throats. But he got me onto the topic after a lot of beers, and he was like, and he was coming up with the whole relativism thing, and how something. But it's true for me and stuff like that. And all I said, I tried to say as clearly as I could after so many beers. But there is a kind of truth we all share, and it's the kind of truth that's testable, and either something works or it doesn't work in the real world. Yeah. And you don't need to get down to metaphysics or to quantum dynamics to explain that if I throw a ball in the air, it's going to fall down, and that's the kind of truth we all share, no matter what culture we're from. And his eyes opened. He just realised that this relativism thing that he'd been kind of semi-assuming.
I get that a lot.
Was just, in fact, nonsense.
I think I agree. I think it is largely nonsense, but I will remember that little anecdote. That's good. A very simple thing you can describe. But when you throw the ball up, it's going to come down, and it doesn't matter what culture you're in or what you think, it's going to happen.
So there's an underlying truth to questions of fact we shouldn't lose sight of.
And it's something that we all share, no matter what assumptions you're starting from, or what background you're from, or what beliefs you hold. There are certain things that are just true, and we share that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think part of I agree with that completely, but I think part of the danger in what a lot of the people who are becoming more vocal, for example, some of these, there was that website that we looked at recently, which was promoting various cancer cures using nutrition and so on, and they almost sort of make one question reality in that they, the things that we have always been able to trust are that, things like that science-based things are trustable because they are scientifically tested. And when the way these people speak about things questions one's trust of science, I think it makes it very difficult for people who don't understand those methods.
Well, you get the people who say that science is just another belief system.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it makes it very difficult for people who haven't had the exposure to things like that to really know what is real and what is true. So if what's seen as a safe alternative presents itself as the real safe alternative in opposition to what is a scientifically accepted and tested thing, then, it's hard for people to feel that, to know what they can trust.
It is. It's not easy at all. I mean, a lot of people think being a skeptic is easy. All you have to go around and saying, no, I don't think that works. But as I've told students and I tell lots of people during talks, is you have to learn a lot of stuff to be to call yourself a big S skeptic. You can't just go around saying it's rubbish. I mean, a lot of people, I've come across people who said, oh, this is rubbish, it's silly. And I say, well, why do you say that? Are you sure it's silly? I know, I probably agree with you that it is, but why do you say X, Y, Z is implausible? Why do you say alternative medicine doesn't work or homeopathy is rubbish? Do you know what the claims are? So that's pretty important to know. Now, what do you think about the idea of publicity stunts? What if the Australian Skeptics or the Skeptic Zone did a big publicity stunt, for example, and went down to Pitt Street Mall here in Sydney with a bucket full of homeopathic pills and say, just look.
Doesn't change people's minds.
No. But would it draw people's attention to the fact that there's these lunatics eating all these pills? There must be something going on, or?
No, I doubt it.
I don't think so.
Well, we're not lunatics.
You think so, Diane? See, she's on my side.
I think it's... Oh, it'd be good to get the publicity. It'd be good to get... It's always great to get the publicity. I'd love everybody to know who we are. I'd like to see this in every newsagent.
Have you written a song yet about homeopathy? It's so small. It's very, very small.
I've got. Yes. Well, yeah. There's something
good.
There's something forming there. It's.
I can't wait.
Yeah. I've got homeopathic levels of inspiration, but.
But I mean, you've had experience, Richard, with things like that. For example, when you went out to Macquarie Uni with the Skeptics crowd there at O Week.
Yeah.
And, you're getting a lot of people coming through there who, uni students attending O Week who would pass by the Skeptics tent and see demonstrations of various things. And I mean, that's a good forum for seeing what people's interest is.
That's good. That work, the Macquarie Skeptics are marvellous. They've got a lot of people interested out there. I think that those university groups are priceless. They're great, and I hope there's some more, I think, going to be starting up in Sydney soon.
I also think that Simon Singh's case is probably the worst thing for homeopathy that they could have done, sued him for defamation. Because I think
chiropractors. But I see your point. Yeah, I see your point. Now, talking about funny things, Rachel, what's that?
Oh, I just wanted to mention the Onion piece that came out yesterday, which was... do you want
to explain what the Onion is for people who are not...
The Onion, yeah, it's a satirical newspaper which has now gone online.
And videos, yeah.
They have a very extravagant
it's great.
website, actually, that it's... For Australian listeners, it's a little bit like what the Chaser used to do when they did CNN and N, but very polished and looks a lot like sort of Fox News or CNN.
Really does, yeah.
And, they have some pretty outrageous stories, which we saw one a week or so ago where they had the shaken baby.
That was brilliant.
See, I like that.
See, Rachel's not so sure.
I mean, this happened. I saw it just a few days after the Chaser got taken off the air for 2 weeks for their story about an outrageous wish foundation or whatever it's called. And I thought it really crossed the line, but Diane thought it was really funny.
I thought it was hilarious. And
I didn't like the Chaser. I didn't.
I wasn't comfortable with the Chaser skit either, but that shaking baby one...
We won't spoil it, so if listeners want to go to the Onion website, they'll probably find it, but it has to do with a baby and a baby capsule, but we'll leave it at that.
Just do a search for
anyway,
it. Today, the Onion, or yesterday, they put out their little sort of vox pop on the website, which is called What Do You Think? And it was called Vaccine Rejectors Put Kids at Risk. And this is where they just interview people on the street and ask them for their opinions. And they said that though children who go unvaccinated for whooping cough are 23 times more likely to contract the illness than those who get their shots, many parents are still choosing to forego immunisation for their kids. What do you think? And then they go out and ask, Mr. Joe on the street.
Mm-hmm. Do they? Or do they just make it up?
I mentioned it was satire when you weren't here, Dave. But they might make it up, but you decide for yourself. Here they've spoken to a gentleman by the name of Scott Sachs, and he is a baker. And I'm going to get my big farmer to read out his response.
Oh, I can read this out. Scott Sachs, the baker, says, but vaccinations cause autism. Sure. Science says otherwise, but Jenny McCarthy has some real convincing anecdotes.
Thank you, Big Pharma. The Onion also spoke to Kits and Dunn, who is a feed blender. Now, Big Pharma, you might know something about blending feed.
I know. I've had a regular feed blender now. Her name's Janet. She comes down once a week to blend my feed, and she gets the feed and she puts it into her feed blending equipment.
And she blends it.
And she blends it, and it costs me £200 a time, and I'm not even sure, but she's an expert.
And the Onion also asked a gentleman by the name of Michael Fowl. And he is a brick junction maker. Now, I believe Diane knows something about brick junction makers.
Well, they're specialised. They just do intersections. Just bricklay intersections. They studied for 4 years to be able to do just intersections.
So they don't do the long,
they don't do anything else.
Long stretchy bit of the wall. They just do where they join.
Because it's very different.
Is it?
Yeah, very different.
Well, you've got two directions to think about at once.
That's right.
You know,
and it intersects.
Yeah, you're adding a third dimension in there.
That's right.
Well, if you're in Melbourne, nearly all junctions are 90 degrees, so that's fairly difficult. But in Sydney, of course, streets meet at all sorts of different angles, so it's even more complicated.
So, Big Pharma, can you read out what Michael Fowl, brick junction maker, had to say about this topic?
Michael Fowl, the brick junction maker, says, "Some people may call me a bad parent for not having my children vaccinated. Other people may call me an irresponsible asshole. But personally, I don't see why I can't be both."
Thank you to the Onion.
Thank you, Onion. And thank you, everybody, for enjoying the think tank with us tonight, out there listening. And thank you to all the tankers here with me today. And thank you once again to Darren for your generous shout of our lovely drink. So
more drinks.
Yeah, the rest of
Hi, Phil Plait from badastronomy.com and the James Randi Educational Foundation here. If you want to get an American take on things like moon hoaxers, astrology, chiropractors, creationists, anti-vaxxers, global warming denialists, homeopaths, psychics, UFO believers, and doom criers of any flavor, then go to badastronomy.com, randy.org, or skepticblog.org, and there you'll be able to read me ranting, railing, frothing, and foaming about hoaxes, nonsense, pseudoscience, anti-science, and anyone who spins, folds, or mutilates reality.
And there we have it, another show. I'll be very much looking forward to getting my co-host back next week when his vocal cords recover, and we'll do it all again. This is the Skeptic Zone. Thanks for listening. We're getting some great reviews and coverage for all the stuff that we've been doing lately, and definitely thanks to Richard for all the wonderful effort he's been doing. But we'll be back next week, and Richard will be back too, so we'll look forward to that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.